Welcome to Beyond Fringe, an organic podcast discussing the topics beyond the fringe of this or any other reality. On this podcast, we explore cryptids, paranormal activity, lost legends, aliens, government conspiracies, historic mysteries, lost treasures, forbidden archaeology, the edge of reality. I'm the Cryptid Guy, and with me always is my co-host, Daniel Tiny Hurst. Together, we explore the world beyond fringe. How are we doing tonight, Tiny?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. I about burned up at work today, but otherwise, I'm pretty straight.
Yeah. What's going on with you getting sunburned? You know you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, it was a moment of thoughtlessness. I've been on third shift for so long, I hadn't had to think about sunscreen, things like that.
Can't be doing that, man. You know sun's bad for you.
True enough. So I have a question.
Sir.
So is it Bigfoots or big feet? What's the plural?
I think it's Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
I saw 4 Bigfoot. And they were hanging out with 3 dogmens.
And they speak in foot and knees?
Foot knees. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Foot knees. And then, there's different dialects of that. People are going to think we're real, Tiny. They're going to be like, hey, these guys on Beyond Fringe, they're all talking about Bigfoot knees.
Well, hey, we know they have a language, and, they call it what, ninja noise or something like that, isn't it?
Samurai chatter.
Samurai chatter.
Ninja noise. I like ninja noise better. It's called ninja noise. That way, when we get some of them recorded talking to each other, we'll just call it ninja noise.
Yeah. Well,
yes, you can see how the ninja noise is quite different than the samurai chatter.
Well, it's a little quieter.
It's a little quiet. It sounds cooler. On tonight's show, Tiny and I were looking at our list of topics, and we decided we wanted to do something on giants. Now, a lot of people think giants, that's ridiculous, but the truth of the matter is, my friends, the historical account in this country alone is unbelievably filled with a plethora of giant skeletons, stories, mythos, folklore, all kinds of stuff. A lot of it's from the indigenous people. A lot of it's from South America, that these legends were that there was giants on South America, and they moved up north, up to all the way to Wisconsin, Tiny. It is ridiculous. When you Google giants in America, the amount of information that is legitimate, Tiny. This stuff all comes from newspaper articles and firsthand accounts of things being found. Giant skeletons, 9 to 10 feet tall, almost as big as you, Tiny. Almost. And guess who ends up showing up, declaring these skeletal remains, saying that they need to be studied, and then they vanish forever, never to be seen again?
It wouldn't be the Smithsonian, would it?
Ding, 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 ding.
My other kid.
Chicken dinner. Exactly. So the Smithsonian shows up and takes them all. And we have accounts all throughout the historical record of this. So tonight we're going to discuss giants on Beyond Fringe. Now, the thing is, Tiny, we're probably going to end up doing 2 or 3 episodes on this topic because there is so much information. I mean, it is ridiculous. I knew giants were a popular topic, but what we're going to do is we're going to discuss giants, how they came about, possible giants being called something different. Can you guess what that word might be, Tiny?
It wouldn't be Nephilim, would it?
It would be Nephilim. Tiny, get out of my head. He did that with his mind, people. The Nephilim.
I am psychic, Christian.
I know you are. So what am I thinking now?
That you could really use a cheeseburger.
That is exactly what I was thinking. I was really thinking cheeseburger. I swear to God, folks. I'm dead serious. So one of the reference books we're using tonight is called The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons, and the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. And this is by a guy named Richard J. Dewhurst. Tiny, this book is awesome. What it basically is how Missing 411 is basically all the accounts of people missing that are newspaper articles and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Well, this guy, Richard J. Dewhurst, has taken all the accounts of skeletal giants and things of that nature that have been in the newspapers all throughout this country of ours and cataloged it. And it is incredible. There is so much information in this. We could do 5 or 6 shows just on this one because he correlates things that are just incredible. I highly recommend this. I started reading this a couple days ago. I've had it for about a year. And the truth is, Tiny, I was telling you earlier, when we moved, I forgot I had this because I packed it away in a box of books that I wanted to make sure were safe.
Yeah.
Along with my Genesis 6 conspiracy, and then my history, myths, and sacred formulas of the Cherokee, and then, all my other, my reference books that I use all the time. And this was in here, and I was so happy because I totally forgot about it. So before I get to this, I'm going to read something, Tiny, that is actually kind of cool. I got this off the internet, and it was off a website that was discussing all the giants and times that they've been their bones have been found, specifically on farms. Now, I want you to listen to these places, all right? Okay?
All right.
1792, Buffalo, New York, all right? 7 to 8 foot skeletons were found. 1800, Ohio. Looks like Kunuwut, Ohio. All right. Among the normal skeletons found, in the remains of a mound, they found gigantic bones, and some of the skull jaws were so large they were big enough to fit over the head and face of a normal human being. 1821, Tennessee, White County. You know where that is, Tiny?
Honestly, I do not.
I'm not sure either. I should have looked that up. But anyway, in White County, an ancient fortification contained the skeletons of gigantic skeletons of stature, averaging at least, the smallest was 7 feet in length. All right. 1825, Ohio Valley. All right. I don't want to give names on this one, but here we go. They found the remains of giants that were, ready for this, dated at 1000 BC. Ohio, Tiny. All right. Again, Ohio. All right. Chesterville. 2 local physicians examined a cranium that was found, so proportionally large, with more teeth than of any other race today. The skeleton was taken to Mansfield and has been lost. Guess to where? Allegedly.
The Vatican.
I'm going to give you that one. Yes, the Vatican. All right. 1830.
Would be the Smithsonian, would it?
Exactly. 1833. Ready for this? Lompoc Ranchero. Soldiers digging in a giant ranchero, California, discovered a male skeleton, 12 foot tall, with carved stone axes and other artifacts surrounding the skeleton. It had, you ready for this? Double rows, upper and double rows below of teeth, Tiny. This is a very common event. Does anybody say, you know what double rows mean, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. Kind of like not exactly like a shark, but
2 sets of teeth.
Same thought process.
Exactly, 2 sets of teeth, front and back. And that is so common with these skeletons that it's considered that's what they had. That's what they were. Was a genetic thing. It's super something teeth. Super. I'll find it. I have that in my notes. But it is ridiculous because they're so common. All right, Illinois, Lake County, numerous mounds, skeletons ranging between 17 and 8 feet. 1845, Virginia, a human jawbone of great size uncovered in a burial mound. All right, the teeth stood transversely to the jawbone. In other words, guess what that means?
What's that mean?
Upper row of teeth.
Upper row of teeth.
I guess that's what that means. That's what it says. There's a little comment on that. All right. 1849, New York. All right. Elliptical mounds uncovered in the Conongo Valley. 8 skeletons. All right. 1 bone was found to be 28 inches long. And they had jewelry and the rest of the skeletons were considered 9 feet and above. Now, when they're saying that one bone, it was a thigh bone, 28-inch long thigh bone, Tiny. Think about that.
It's a pretty long thigh.
That's over 2 feet. 1850, New York. All right, Allegheny County. A reported very large human bones were uncovered during excavation for the railroad in a mound. 1851, a skull rib bone and shin bone were found that indicate the height to be over 8 feet tall. 1856, West Virginia, Wheeling, West Virginia. Human skeleton was discovered, 11 foot tall. 1858, Vermilion Township, Ohio. Skeletons of a race of being much longer than local inhabitants were discovered, 9 to 10 feet tall. 1870, Ohio again, in Brush Creek Township. A large mound containing the skeletal remains of several humans up to 9 feet tall. And ready for this one? Guess what else was found in there?
What?
A large stone tablet with unknown inscriptions similar to Greek in writing. 1872, Ohio, Seneca Township. All right. At least, oh my goodness, what is this? The remains of 3 skeletons, at least 8 feet tall in height, in impeccable condition. 1873, Ohio. Ready for this? A female skeleton, 7 foot 11 and a half inches tall.
You want snoo.
All right, yeah, exactly. Him do bad snoo. Anyway, 1873, Washington, D.C. Oh, you ready for this? Large skeletons taken to the Army Medical Museum in Washington. Unknown what happened to them. In other words, and this will be the last one of the words. All right, Wisconsin mounds, giant skulls, excavated, disappeared. Another one, Kansas City, giant skull unearthed in a mound. Giant humans belongings. Oh my goodness, ready for this one? I'm going to read the whole thing on this one. 1877, Kansas City, Missouri. A giant skull was unearthed when mounds were opened and giant man tracks belonging to humans, 25 to 30 foot tall. And it goes on and on and on. I have 3 more pages of this. I think my point has been made, Tiny. We have had giants in this country.
Okay. So, the first thing that somebody's going to ask.
Yes.
Is, well, the biggest one you mentioned was, what, 23 to 25 feet tall?
25 to 30 foot tall.
I'm sorry, 25 to 30. That is definitely a giant. But the others were...
That's a corn-fed giant, Tiny.
Exactly. It's granddaddy giant. Mm-hmm. So the rest were between 8 and 12 feet. Now, why would that be considered a giant?
I don't know. I don't know what the qualifications, I don't know what the height limit is for giant, but I'm going to say this. Anything bigger than you, I'm calling a giant.
Right. Well,
so let's just call a giant anything. How about 8 foot? 8 foot and up. We'll call that giant. Is that fair?
Well, you have to think that, and anybody that's ever been in a building that was, is more than 100 years old knows that people back then were smaller.
They were tiny. Yeah, they were. What was the average height? Was it 5'3", something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And now, the average man's 6 foot tall. So what would be considered a giant back then is a lot different than what we would call a giant now.
But these are thousands of years older than our civilization.
Yeah.
So the question begs to be asked, who was living here and where were they living and what were they doing?
Giants, apparently.
Apparently.
Now, do you think this
Tiny,
were
double rows of teeth, Tiny? Double rows of teeth.
Do you think that might be where the mythology of the Titans came from?
Well, you know what? I do. But since you brought that up, let's go ahead and bring up a topic that we know is coming, and we might as well just get it over. Where did the giants come from? Now, you and I both believe that the giants are Nephilim. Am I incorrect in assuming that? Because I know we've discussed it.
It makes sense.
All right, it makes sense. So, one of the books that I feel is just important to have in the cryptid world, as far as research goes, is the Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne. Now, you've heard me talk about this guy, I don't know how long. I think this guy is brilliant. I think he's dead on. His research is impeccable. I've been telling you to buy one of these for quite a while because you need to have it. And he explains giants from the biblical sense as the daughters of Cain. And it makes complete sense because what he does is he talks about the antediluvian epoch and the age of great heroes. And in the first chapter, he talks about the heroes of old, like Gilgamesh and things like that. Gilgamesh ruled his land for 120 years, Tiny. And I believe he was, I think, was it 8 to 12 feet tall, something like that? Something massive like that?
Yeah.
And his best friend was basically a Bigfoot. So
that would be an awesome best friend to have.
Oh God, yeah. Can you imagine?
That's why he's hanging out with me, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I do that behind everyone. Yeah, I do that behind your back. I tell everyone you're a shaved Yeti.
Right. Okay.
That I had brought over here and taught you to talk and walk. Anyway, and what he does in this whole book is he discusses the whole mythos of giants, the Nephilim Wars. And the other thing he does that is just incredible is not only does he talk about the biblical accounts of giants, but he also talks about how secret societies and the descendants of giants plan to enslave humankind. And everything in this book is like he has researched thoroughly, and most of it is biblical text. And how cool would it be good to have this guy on the show?
That would be amazing.
I mean, he talks about the Knights Templar in this, Tiny. I mean, he's got everyone.
Well,
the Benedictine monks, the Holy Grail. I mean, Joseph of Arimathea, everyone. I mean, just everything in this. He's got the kings of Camelot. I mean, no, he's got everyone in this. I mean, everything. Novus Odom Seclorum. I mean, he talks about everything. And then, here we go in chapter 70. That's right, Tiny. I said chapter 70. All right? Inside Freemasonry. All right? So, he has got everyone wrapped up in this book.
Interesting.
He talks, I mean, he's got Atlantis tied into this thing.
Oh, wow.
The fairy kingdoms, he talks about fairies, he talks about that. The Order of Draconis. I mean, everything you could ever think about is in this book. And he's got everything. And it all coincides. But guess what it all starts with, my friend?
The Big Bang.
Giants. You're not wrong. It all starts from giants because of the Nephilim. Now, as we know, if you read Genesis 6, I believe that's where the title came from, in the days of old, the fallen angels came and mated with the daughters of man and produced the Nephilim. And these Nephilim were just unbelievably strong. They were giants. They pretty much had an unbelievably long lifespan. The problem is, you know what the problem was, Tiny, with all that?
What?
They wanted to rule the world. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I mean, if you are, and we talked about the difference between paranormal, supernatural, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And this would, I think, definitely classify as a supernatural being.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, it's divine. I mean, the Nephilim were still the Watchers were fallen angels, dude. That's divinity. I mean, you're dealing with the power of God at that point.
And if you're a divine entity,
corrupted divine entity at that,
you're going to look at us as, ants under your boot, really.
That's exactly what they did. And I'm not going to go into all of the stuff. It would take, again, that's a separate podcast. We can get into all that about the things that the giants did. I would like to personally invite Gary Wayne on the off chance he has ever heard of Beyond Fringe. I would personally invite Gary Wayne at any time to come and do our show because that would make us so cool.
Absolutely.
It would just be so awesome to have Gary Wayne on the show. The guy is honestly, he's brilliant. The amount of things he covers in this book. Have you seen this book, Tiny? Have you ever seen it? It is almost 3 inches thick, and it goes to page dun dun dun. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine right now. I think he spent 30 years writing this. I think he stops writing at 692, and then his end notes and his end notes are almost another 200 pages.
Wow.
So I mean, this is just an incredible amount of work. As you know, as someone that's had to to write theses and things like that, the amount of work this book must have taken, Tiny, is just baffling, because it was all corroborated and just footnoted, and he talks about where everything comes from. He explains things to a point where anyone can understand it, including someone like myself. And if you can do that, then you are doing something right.
And you know that so much of that information that he had to dig through was incredibly convoluted.
Oh yeah, well dude, he must have been translating Greek, Latin, Aramaic. I mean, he had to go through all this.
It's a very dedicated.
I'm gonna read the back of the book, because this is a good explanation. All right, there are giants among us, passing largely unnoticed, intent on carrying out a secret plan to enslave all of humanity. They may not look like giants today, but their bloodlines extend all the way back to the Nephilim, the offspring of angels who mated with human women, described in Genesis 6, when giants were roaming the land. So that pretty much gives you a pretty good idea what he did. And then he goes further to say, when God cast the angel Lucifer and his followers out of heaven, Lucifer set into motion a scheme to ensure the Nephilim survived. Why? Because from the bloodlines of these Nephilim, the Antichrist will come. So he keeps this all going, and this is why he talks about the secret societies. To keep his plan alive, Satan has enlisted the loyalty of secret societies, such as the Freemasons, the Templars, the Rosicrucians, to conspire in teaching the theology and history of the world that is contrary to the biblical one. This Genesis 6 conspiracy marches toward the Great Tribulation, when then loyalty of the terminal generation, this generation, will be tested. So again, he goes on with a lot of stuff. Now, Tiny, you know some of the stuff I just read, I'm not gonna, I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But for someone that doesn't know about all the teachings of some of those societies, you could see where it all ties up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's all those what would you call them? I guess anti-secret societies.
Yes. Yeah, those are worse, in my opinion, because they hate the guys that hate everything.
Yeah.
So and Tiny, did you know that in our lovely North Carolina, not too far from where we are right now, guess what they found?
Giants.
Duh, you are on a roll today, Tiny.
I'm possessed.
Tiny, have you been eating your Wheaties?
I have.
I can tell. Now, this other great book that we talked about earlier, The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, and this is by Richard Dewhurst. He's got a little part in here, and let I orate. You ready for this one, Tiny?
Yes.
This one's going to blow you away.
All right.
16 North Carolina skeletons shipped to the Smithsonian. 1883, the foothill section of North Carolina became the site of an intense excavation for Indian relics. Dr. James Mason Splantire, a Lanor dentist and Indian authority, discovered several large mounds in the area. Relics which he and others unearthed so aroused the interest of officials of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Hear me now, that a representative, J.P. Rogan, was sent to the area to assist with the excavations. Rogan wrote a comprehensive report of Caldwell County findings using sketches to illustrate each of the 5 notable mounds discovered. All were located in the Yadkin Valley area, now known as, guess where, Tiny?
Wouldn't be around Judaculla, would it?
No, but you're not far away. It's not that far away. It's by Happy Valley. After skeletons were carefully removed and labeled, they were sent to the Smithsonian. Later, one of the mounds was carefully reproduced in a miniature for public viewing. It was on the T.F. Nelson farm, about 1.5 miles southeast of Patterson, that two important discoveries were made. The first mound was only about 18 inches in height from the first appearance, writes Rogan. Of circular shape, it was about 38 feet in diameter. A pit had been dug about 3 feet deep, with the center area being about 6 foot in depth. 16 skeletons were found in various positions, some squatting, some reclining, while others were in small stone sepulchres of water-worn rocks, continues Rogan. In the official Smithsonian report, in the center was a skeleton standing upright. In its large stone cyst, also found were stones shaped like discs and pitted. They were celts. Well, yeah, they were celts, crude bones, and soapstone pipes, black paint made from molded nuts and charcoal. 26 more North Carolina skeletons were found. On the W.D. Jones property, 2 miles east of Patterson, a fourth excavation was made, reports Rogan to the Smithsonian. And guess what happened to all of these skeletons?
They all just disappeared.
They vanished to the Smithsonian, never to be heard from again. Now, as I started reading this, I looked up where this was. Tiny, this is not far from us. So guess what we're going to be doing?
Oh, road trip.
Road trip. We are going to reinvestigate this entire scenario and see if anyone in that particular area has ever heard of the giant skeletons. And that will be a podcast forthcoming. But that is something we plan on doing. I am very, very jazzed about this stuff, Tiny. What about you?
Man, I'm game. Definitely. I mean, that could be some kin. We could be looking into my family tree.
Well, duh. Besides that, but why would the cryptid guy be excited about the finding of giant skeletons?
Well, could be because we were fascinated by a very furry giant. Or no, excuse me, a hairy giant.
I'll take furry for 2. Yeah. So here's my thoughts. How do we know that some of these giant skeletons belong to our hairy buddy, Bigfoot?
It would be bright size, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. And wouldn't that also pretty much every area I talked about earlier, wouldn't that be an area of location that we have had reports of, said furry, hairy buddy friend of ours?
It certainly would.
Now, let me run this by you, Tiny. Let's say, hypothetically, that some of the Nephilim made it to this country X how many ever thousands of years ago. And I don't know, maybe decided to start their own little family. And do you think maybe that's where our fuzzy buddy came from?
It's entirely possible. It would explain a lot, actually.
Because the more and more I research all cryptids, specifically Bigfoot, and even to a great extent, Dogman, and the older I get, I am convinced, and I'm saying this, I think, for the first time on our podcast, I am convinced that Bigfoot is a relic of the Nephilim. I don't know, over the years and the investigations and the reports I've had, I just think that's what they are originally. And here's why. Because, the DNA we get and all these reports we get, and they can breed with human women and and the way they act. And then you've got the reports of cannibalism, and then the way some of them are described. I think that makes sense. What do you say?
Yeah. And the closest thing we've had to a DNA match is what, like 99%? Something like that, isn't it?
Something like that. And you know what, though, Tiny? And here's the other thing that I have to discuss here is why would all of these giant skeletons specifically disappear to the Smithsonian? What up with that?
Because the Smithsonian's one of those secret societies.
There you go, folks. You heard it here first. Tiny has broken the chain. He has discovered why the Smithsonian does what it does. Actually, you know what, Tiny? That's a really good. That's a real good idea. Hey, think about it. The Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. could be the ultimate secret society.
The Smithsonian and the Vatican.
In conjunction with the post office.
Yeah. Well, no, I've worked for the post office. There's not a lot of secret there, trust me.
Okay, but that's what they wanted you to see.
True.
See how that works?
True.
They flipped it on you, Tiny. They flipped it.
And the post office is not federally funded like most people think.
Who funds it?
It funds itself.
Oh, with the stamps? And
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But, however, that does not get them off the hook in my book. I will still blame the post office for things that have been lost in the mail to me over the years. I can't change my mind. Now I'm starting to think you had something to do with it. Anyway.
So, Christian, you think that Bigfoot is a relic of the Nephilim? Do you think that Bigfoot may hold still some of that divinity that the Nephilim did?
You know what, Tiny? That is such a good question, but I'm gonna say this. It's possible. But I don't think every one of them does. I think it might be like a genetic abnormality that shows up every couple of generations. You know how you get the reports of like the real huge ones that just tend to be real, they're said to be real kind and, you know, and helpful.
Like the 14-footer down.
Like the 14-footer we were talking about.
Yeah.
All right, maybe that that genetic shows. Maybe it's like, if a there's a blonde Bigfoot born, maybe it's because it's got some kind of special properties that maybe from the divine. Huh?
Like the white buffalo.
Exactly, something like that. So I would not put it out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think every one of them is like that. And if I had to guess, I'd say that specific genetic trait probably shows most often in the type 1s.
Yeah, I would feel the same way.
Because the 2s, the 3s, and the relic hominid types, I don't think those things aren't. They're not the nicest ones, and they don't seem to be that as intelligent as the type 1s. So I think if that is true, and I'm definitely not throwing it out of the realm of possibility, but I would strongly suggest that the type 1 would be the ones that specific genetic abnormality would manifest in.
Well, and the type 1s are the more family oriented ones. They're smarter. They tend to not be as aggressive. Makes sense.
Well, and they tend to be kinder. I mean, these are the types, you and I both heard reports about little kids getting lost in the woods camping, and then, this big gorilla, for lack of a better word, takes them, carries them, calms them down, and it doesn't hurt them, doesn't try to eat them, doesn't try to, take them astray, but he brings them, or she brings them to their camp and, just disappears.
Yeah.
There's been I've heard several reports of that. I've also heard several reports of type 1s interfering with violent acts that were about to be put upon human beings from type 2s and dogmen. And I've heard of type 1s interfering with that. Now, despite what anyone believes, I still think the type 1s, if you get a type 1 alpha male, that to me is going to be the big boy in the block. I think he's going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 feet tall, and he's going to be the boss of the woods. So, as you know, we're pretty proficient about what dogman looks like, the size and the types. And I would be hard pressed to say that even an alpha type dogman at 10 foot tall, with all its power and aptitudes towards the ability to, bring harm upon any living thing, would be hard pressed to fight a full agitated alpha type 1 male. That's probably, I'm still going to go with the Bigfoot on that. And I think I'm sorry, what?
It'd be a fight I'd pay to see.
It would be a heck of a fight, but here's the problem. Once he gets his hands around the neck of that dogman, or anything it can crush, it's over.
Well, isn't there a lot of reports of Dogman having articulated hands too?
Oh yeah, but I mean the thing is they're not the size. Depending on what size the alpha male is, it's still I've never heard a report of a alpha male dogman being the size of an alpha male type 1 Bigfoot.
Right.
So that's why I still think they're who's who in the zoo in the cryptid world.
Well, and you've got to think too. The type ones are likely smart enough to be able to use tools, which would
Well,
probably pick up a log and use it like a baseball bat.
see, I'm glad you said that, Tiny, because that reminds me of a site you and I found where we found Bigfoot tracks and Dogman tracks there, and I still believe that was some kind of territorial dispute because we found logs, and that's what they were, that looked like they had been used as baseball bats. And I think that's exactly right. I think that would happen, and I think that also happens because there is an intelligence difference.
Yeah.
And Dogman is a highly intelligent creature. But I'd say it's probably number 2 in intelligence to a type 1 Bigfoot. It might be smarter than the type 2, 3, or Relic hominid, but I just have to give it to the type 1 Bigfoot for intelligence, and that's just from the reports we've had. And I'm still convinced. Not all dogmen. I don't think dogmen are inherently evil. I still don't think that. And I'm wondering if they have something maybe to do with the Nephilim themselves. Maybe a specific subcategory Nephilim that we didn't get to. Maybe Anubis was a Nephilim.
Yeah.
And we haven't really looked into that. I've never heard of that connection being made. Have you?
No, I don't. I've never heard anything actually about it. And of course, the Dogman genre is pretty new. It's just now getting traction, so I'm sure there's a lot of people looking into a lot of stuff.
Well, I mean, let's just throw a hypothetical out there. Let's just say, supposedly, Anubis, the Cynocephali, is an offshoot of the Nephilim too.
I mean, it would make sense because if you have divinity and you perform what people would assume is a miracle, then, well, lo and behold, you're a god.
Well, that would make sense. That was probably how Anubis got his gig. I mean, that makes sense to me. Doesn't make sense? That makes total sense. So I think that's a podcast we need to think about for the future. Just strictly doing it on the history of Anubis and where he came from. Because I'm willing to bet you're 100% right. I'm willing to bet that's why the Egyptians made him a deity. They probably saw him perform some incredible feats and figured, well, this guy's got to be a god somehow, so we'll just make him one.
I wonder, it's interesting too because you hear a lot of Dogman researchers. They say that the one thing that I've heard in common is they find evidence and they have sightings around graveyards a lot. And what was Anubis?
King of the dead, yeah, god of the dead.
So I mean, what if Anubis was a Nephilim that for whatever reason was attracted to the dead? Or
hey, you know what? That is totally valid. That is a valid thought, Daniel. And I'll tell you why. Because we're dealing with something that's the Nephilim. We're dealing with something that's, part human, part fallen angel. So why wouldn't it be? Why would it not be admired in the thought of a human death? Because they don't like us. It's in the Bible. They're here to corrupt us and destroy us and blah blah blah. So again, you know what? These would be really good questions for our hopeful future potential. Please guest Gary Wayne.
And
if
of
we
course,
can ever get him.
If there's listeners out there that have more knowledge, biblically speaking, or have done a lot more reading than we have on these subjects, and you have information, let us know, please.
Definitely. And you know what, Tiny? You know how they can let us know?
How's that?
They can call us at 828-407-0046, or they could email us at cryptidguy001@gmail.com. Or, you know how they can get all that information, Tiny? They can get everything, all the emails, including yours, They can go to Asheville Cryptid and Paranormal Society.com and just click on it. And it's all right there, including Tiny, including all of our podcasts. How about that?
We try and make it simple.
It's simple. And Tiny has been kind enough to take over some of the administrative work on our Facebook page. So that will be getting revamped. He is much better at that than I am. I tend to get lazy. There it is. I admit it. Tiny, quick question for you.
Is it 14?
It is. Sweet. How many cheeseburgers I want right now? Dang, you got me again. So why do you think Ohio has been like the epicenter for the giant skeletons? Because I've been trying to figure that out. Do you think it's geographical? Is it because it's kind of close to Canada and maybe these things came over the land bridge? Or, I mean, why? Why Ohio?
I mean, we kind of know that the further north, under the colder climates things are, the bigger they are. So, maybe it was a temperature thing. And they just kind of moved down and kind of settled in that area. I mean, it's a temperate climate, right?
Because the reason I say that is because, as you and I both know, the indigenous Bigfoot in Ohio, the Ohio Grassman, is allegedly he runs on the bigger side of the Bigfoot genome. So maybe that kind of proves our theory a little bit, because guess what? That 25 to 30 foot skeleton was found in Ohio. And the Bigfoots in Ohio tend to be bigger than the Bigfoots in any other region, with the exception of probably California, Oregon, and Alaska, and Canada.
And you're talking about something with divinity, and then that kind of makes you wonder too about the ley lines in the earth and things like that.
Exactly. Because, as you know, where we are, we have a ley line going right through our area.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those giant skeletons were found not too far from here. I mean, we're like maybe an hour away, if that.
Speaking of that, you hadn't mentioned our famous giant here.
I was just about to, and I'm so glad you transitioned into that. Tiny is talking about the one, the only Judiculla, also known as anyone?
No.
Sukaloo. Judiculla, also known as Sukaloo, and that is the Cherokee name for Bigfoot. Now, Sukaloo, there's a couple different stories about him. Sukaloo was allegedly so big he could jump from mountaintop to hunt. And when he did this, he shook the earth. And other reports of Sukaloo, they refer to him as a Slant-Eyed Giant, which is basically a good-sized Bigfoot, probably a patty type, and he had glowing red eyes, and apparently he had the abilities to communicate with the Cherokee Nation and would work deals out with them. And he was also kind of known as a trickster, Tiny. In other words, you believe this? He'd welsh on his deals because he'd find a way out of them. Can you believe that?
Well, that's just good business, I guess.
Cherokee, also known as the Cherokee also referred to him as a trickster. But guess what else he liked, Tiny?
He liked the Indian maidens too, didn't he?
He did. Oh, Tiny, man! People are going to think we're just reading a script here. He was into human women. So, what would that be? Is that just taste, or is that genetic taste, or is this creature something that's a lot older than other ones? And maybe, just maybe, because remember, the Native Americans in this area go back how many years, Tiny? I've said it a million times.
God, like 23,000 or something like
14,000, close.
14,000.
14,000 years in this general area. So that is a lot longer than most cultures have been around. And who's to say they didn't have visitors from other lands, specifically, and here I go with this, giants.
Well, and Sukaloo may have been, one of the originals that had been left over.
Exactly. Sukaloo could have been one of the original Nephilims. He could have 100 different names, and we never know it's the same guy. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So that's something else we need to check into.
Interesting. And isn't his cave? It's supposedly up off the Parkway, isn't it?
It's the Devil's Courthouse.
Yeah.
And it's probably 20 miles south of downtown Asheville, maybe 25.
The Devil's Courthouse is a hike. It's incredible. I mean, it's not a hard hike. It's paved, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's paved
all the way to the top, but it is so far up. Like the one time that I actually went there, I couldn't see anything down except clouds.
Well, the thing is, it's got a heck of a view. It's a beautiful place, but the folklore goes that Sukaloo used to hold court in the Devil's Courthouse, and that's where he would make deals with people. And he also had his minions there. And guess what his minions were, Tiny?
I was thinking about that, and it brings to mind because if I remember right, they were small, mischievous creatures, and
Puckwudgies.
The word for that would be puckwudgie, wouldn't it?
Puckwudgies, yes, Tiny. As usual, you are correct, sir. His minions were puckwudgies. So that is a very, very strange folklore. You have on one end of the spectrum a giant, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have basically what the Native Americans would refer to as little people. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking, maybe 18 inches tall. And there's 3 different types. And we will go over those types in a different podcast because that's another very long story. But it makes me think that possibly, when Gary Wayne is in, one of his chapters, he talks about the Fae and the fairy folk being in cahoots with the Nephilim. Now, I can't think of a prime example like that. I mean, that's just right out there. Boom, there it is. And that's in the folklore.
It would make sense. I mean, if you're a divine creature, then you're going to be in cahoots with all of the supernatural ones.
Well, yeah.
You're talking about the Nephilim being the sons of Cain, right? And wasn't Cain?
Yeah, it's the daughters of Cain. Yeah, right.
Daughters of Cain. I'm sorry. And Cain was supposed to be the first vampire, right?
Well, now, I'll be honest with you. I have never read the folklore on that, but there was a movie done, I don't know how, maybe in the early 2000s, where, Dracula's being fought and so, but they explain, they go into Dracula's past, and he was actually Cain. And then after he was Cain, he ended up being Judas Iscariot. And that goes to show you why he was why silver and any kind of holy relic was so a affront to him, because he was denied the kingdom of God. And he was, cursed to walk the world forever, and never being able to die. So that is some mythology and folklore that I've heard in the past about Cain. And there's a Roman soldier that appeared, the one that pierced the side of Christ on the 5th stigmata, that was also cursed to walk the earth forever. But again, that's all regional, different folklore. It depends on where you're hearing it. I don't have any hard evidence that those stories have actually been real. A lot of that stuff was probably fictionalized for movies and things like that, and that's how we hear it. It's all like one of those secondhand things. But I don't know. Is it possible? Of course, it's possible. But I can see all that coming in conjunction with the way Gary Wayne sees it. What about you?
Yeah, most definitely. So you know what you've kind of done here when connecting Bigfoot with Nephilim, right?
What have I done?
Folks, I'm about to get Christian stirred up.
Oh, don't even start. Don't even start. I know where you're going with this. Don't even.
You made a good case for mind speak and a few other things like that.
No. No, 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 no. NWO, no. Tiny, maybe the type ones that have that, divinity gene and it's expressed. Maybe those guys, but for no, and that's maybe.
Well, aren't those the ones that when you hear the accounts and people say that they've mind spoke to them, isn't it type ones that they see?
No, those are a bunch of hippies that are high and they're talking trees. I mean, that doesn't happen. My favorite is when they talk about being healed. Oh, it healed me, man. It healed my teeth.
Well, I mean, if they have divinity left over,
Well, yeah, if they want to help you, why would they bother helping humanity?
God knows somebody needs to.
Exactly, but why would they? I mean, look at all we do is bring death and destruction to their kind. We wipe
True.
out their homes, we kill their food supply, we poison their water, we pollute their air. I mean, why would they be nice to us? A lot of people say, "Oh, why wouldn't Bigfoot talk to us?" Well, because of those reasons right there. And by the way, I am a firm believer that every cryptid that we've ever talked about or ever will talk about knows exactly how dangerous humanity is if they're carrying that big steel stick with them. So, we're the bringers of doom, man. Why would they be nice to us? If I was a dog man in the woods, minding my own business, hunting dinner, and I look over and there's a bunch of hairless apes with their fire sticks, I'd be ticked off, and I'd also have to get out of there. But I'd yell at them too. So that's some of the reports I've had because they know if they stay, they're going to die.
So, what's the main difference between like a dog man howl and a Bigfoot yell?
One's a howl, one's a scream. I think Bigfoot has language like like what we were talking about. I think they actually have a language, and I think Dogman has a language, but I don't think it's like verbal like ours. I think it's probably more like infrasound and maybe growls and different types of barks and different types of noises they make. And even in the book of Marvels and Travels with Sir John Mandeville, when he's discussing about all the principalities he's visiting to that are run by these, xenocephali, he says they have their own language, but it's basically the humans can't understand it
Right.
because it's like an infrasound. Now the funny thing, the flip side is they can understand human language. And there have been reports I've read, I have never personally taken one, but again, I'm going to go on my Native American kick here and talk about how cool Native American culture is. There have been reports of Native Americans seeing dogmen in the woods being pretty much chased or hunted down, and they speak to them in Cherokee or whatever indigenous language they know, and these creatures appear to understand it and leave them alone. And there have also been reports of our hairy buddy Bigfoot doing the exact same thing. So there's got to be something to that. I'm a firm believer that they understand ancient language of the Native Americans, because I'm also a firm believer that not too long ago in the historic record, they probably, the Native Americans consider them another tribe of people. They're not animals. They call them another tribe of people.
Right.
And specifically in the Pacific Northwest, they used to trade with them. And apparently these, the Bigfoot and the, or just whatever you want to call them, that specific creature had the ability to do like the best basket weaving, and they had the ability to hunt better, and they would just trade up and train things. And apparently at this point in time, Bigfoot also used to use fire. So they were very well acquainted with fire. But something happened. There's reports of something called the Bigfoot Wars, and that's when all that ended in that region. So who's to say that that's not possible even to this day? That's why I'm a firm believer that they still have a language, and I'm a firm believer that Dogman has a language.
Well, and as far as understanding human language, that makes complete sense. My dogs understand what I'm telling them. Like, cats, birds, all these animals, and a lot of that, yes. Before anybody says it, yes, a lot of that is the tone that you use, the inflection you use. They understand, no is a bad thing because of how you say it, not the word. However, when in the case of a Sasquatch or even a great ape, really. I believe that the intelligence is there. They just don't have the vocal cords.
Well, even like, the reports of people hearing Bigfoot talk, they say it's got to move its neck back and kind of crush its shoulders together. And like they have a very, very raspy voice. That's because their vocal cords have to be like compressed for them to make the speech sounds that we hear. So, whereas when they do it on their own for their own language, they don't need to do that. Have you ever heard the Sierra Sounds by Ron Moorhead?
Yeah, I have. I need to listen to them completely. Like I just caught pieces of it, but because I was doing something else while I was listening to.
Now, let me ask you this: Do you think that's a real conversation happening between two Bigfoots?
I've got no reason to say it's not.
See, I believe I'm in the same boat with you. I choose to believe that, but could have been faked, of course. But here's the thing: there are so many reports all over the country, North America, Canada, of all of them hearing the same chatter, and even in, rural places and just places, neighborhoods in the woods, near the woods, even in hiking trails, they hear that same kind of chatter. So I'm convinced that I think all Bigfoots have basically a universal communication. And I think that's what it is. I think all Bigfoot speaks the same language. And if they don't, maybe they have a variation of the dialect or something like that. Like, how you have a northern dialect and southern dialect. And I think that's what they have. But I also think I think all cryptids, all well-established cryptids, have the ability to communicate with each other. And who's to say, ready for this one? How about maybe Dogman and Bigfoot can communicate? Why would that be out of the realm of possibility if they're both descendants of the Nephilim?
Well, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Because we've both heard reports of Dogman and Bigfoot working in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, and it's funny because you hear a lot that, oh well, Bigfoot don't like Dogman hanging around, Dogman don't like Bigfoot hanging around, vice versa. But then there's these other cases, and then you hear a lot that people have both on their property, but they just stay separated. And I've heard a lot that Dogman will stay like to the north of the property. And
I mean it's the same as like in the LBL, because the LBL, they tell you not to go to the northern part because that's where Dogman is, and in the southern part that's where Bigfoot lives. So I mean,
and
I'm sorry.
something like that, when you have two apex predators, I mean two serious contenders, you kind of have to just live with it.
I agree.
If they fought, for territory constantly, I mean, they would decimate each other.
They would, because they're not going to it's not going to be a solo battle. It's going to be, maybe there's 12 Dogman and one Bigfoot. Well, he's toast. And maybe there's 12 Bigfoot and one Dogman. He's toast. So I often wonder if they just kill each other on sight, or if they give each other a warning, or you never know. But I digress. And we are talking about giants and how we think that the Nephilim were these giants. And we have pretty much come to the conclusion to ourselves that is a very distinct possibility that Bigfoot is a Nephilim, a relic Nephilim. And from all of these giant skeletons found in the country, specifically in the Ohio River Valley area, giants from 25 to 30 feet tall are being found. And then the remains taken like a thief in the night by the Smithsonian to keep them from the public. Now, Tiny, I know we were kidding about when we said that they're probably the ultimate secret society, and they probably really are. Why would they keep all this knowledge from regular people like you and me?
Well, there again, it's all about control. I mean,
exactly.
you really want power, you really want to control, you control knowledge. It's just that simple. And that goes into the whole conspiracy theory way of thinking, but it's the truth. If a person don't have the knowledge to make educated decisions, to make thoughts of their own, then they're sheep. So you keep all of this stuff, and all of these, because things like that could change history, could change the way we view so many different things.
Well, it would any doubters, any naysayers to say the Bible wasn't real, that is 100% proof that the Bible is real. And if the Bible is real, what else has to be real, Tiny?
God.
And
The devil.
exactly. Now, there's a lot of people that want to believe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but if they're given a choice and they're said, oh, by the way, this is exactly how it is, so you either live right or you live wrong. Now, let me ask you a question, brother. How many people in this world, including ourselves, are living the way they're supposed to live?
Very, very, very.
All right. And I did say including ourselves. So if you released that information to the world, what do you think is going to happen first?
Oh, God.
Yeah, him.
I wouldn't even begin. That's mind-boggling to think that the cascade that would happen if humanity all of a sudden had definitive proof. Yeah, you're screwing up.
And it's not just about faith, because you and I are both men of faith. I mean, that's not enough, because if you read the Bible, it tells you what you're supposed to do. There's 10 little rules right there that you're supposed to live by on a daily basis. Now, how many people in this country think do that?
I think they get close to some. I mean, definitely
I don't.
not all.
I mean, I'll be the first one to admit. I mean, I'm not. I try, but I'm a good person, I believe. But if you're looking at the Bible and you try to weigh yourself by that, are you really a good person? I mean, I honestly have one guy I know, and you know him too, and you already know who I'm talking about. That is probably not going to have any problems.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one I know that lives like that. And if if I have to meet someone at the pearly gates to sneak me in, it's going to be him.
Right.
And you know who I'm talking about. We don't have
do.
permission to use his name.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only guy I know. So, I mean, think about what that would do to society in general. Think about the choices people would have to make. Think about the entertainment business. Think about what people do for business in general.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that would totally flip the economy.
Not just what people do, but how they do it.
Now think about that. I mean, and now would it bring peace to the earth, or would it set forth an Armageddon type situation? That's the other question you have to ask yourself.
I'm not necessarily the right person to ask that, because I don't know that anything will bring peace to the earth, because we're humans. We're
Exactly.
all afflicted with the same human disease.
Exactly. But if you don't have a choice, if you're given, listen, this is it. This is how it works. Get on board or burn. Don't you think that would create a subculture that would want to eradicate one way or the other?
Yeah.
See, the people in charge of everything, the people running the show, the people that have us all on the end of the puppet strings, they're not stupid, my brother. They're not stupid at all. In fact, the problem is they're brilliant, because they see things like this. So maybe not necessarily letting everyone know the truth isn't a bad thing, or is it? That's the conundrum.
Right.
Because part of me is a little column A on that, and part of me is a little column B. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we're talking about the Smithsonian in this instance, but you talk biblically, you've got to look at the Vatican too. They hold. I mean, did they ever release all of the Dead Sea Scrolls when they found them back in the early 90s?
And the thing about the Vatican that's really interesting is they have one of the biggest telescope arrays on the planet for doing nothing except looking into space. So think about that. So what does that tell you?
Exactly.
That's definitely going to be another podcast. We have to do the Vatican. We have to do the secrets of the Vatican.
I'll tell you what, I would love to get in the basement of either place, though.
Dude, can you imagine hanging out, like, give me a week in the Vatican basement? How cool would that be?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
I doubt you would come. Well, I doubt you would come out. But if you did come out, you wouldn't come out the same person.
No, because you'd probably see things a whole lot different. That's the reason why I think the topics of giants is so important. I know it sounds kind of corny, but if you just let me listen and let me put this into perspective for you. See, for the belief of giants to be real, we have to understand what created giants. And the book that explains that best is what? The Bible. And it talks about how giants were made. It even says it in those days there were giants. I mean, it says it right there.
Well, Goliath.
Exactly. Well, that's one of them. And then there was there's a bunch more. I mean, in the Bible, they talk about giants all over the time. And, there's texts about it. I mean, it talks about Og and Magog and all these other giants. So if that's true, then, of course, they were brought forth by fallen angels and the daughters of Cain. And if that's true, then that means everything else in the Bible is true, pretty much, if you want to just call it that way. So that is not only affirming to a lot of people, but it's a complete contradictory belief to like basic science. So now you're going to have issues with science.
Yeah.
So now science is going to be thrown out the window. So now what's that going to do to the advancement of, medical science and all other stuff? They're not going to be taken seriously, even though that's a completely different subject, but you have to look at it all the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think in general, people would completely compartmentalize. They would either be one way or the other as far as, and there's already some like that, but as far as faith goes, they would quit dealing anything that had to do with science because they want to be faithful. They want to believe, right?
I agree. Yeah. Now, but see, that to me, that's the problem. Because in my mind, and this is just my way of looking at it, God gave us the ability to have knowledge, and he gave us the ability to think, and he gave us free will. And what's wrong with using that knowledge and ability to find things out to help other people?
Well, I think that's kind of the point. Why he gave it to us, so we could.
Yeah. And that goes to that's one of the reasons why we're even talking about this tonight. We're here to help people. This is what we're doing. We're hoping someone will listen to this podcast and maybe start thinking outside the box a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't have all the answers. These are just our opinions. We're not saying this is set in stone. This is just a topic we cover, and this is only part one of the topic we're going to cover with giants, because I think we're probably going to have an easy 3-part series on this. What do you think?
Easily, especially once I start reading that book.
Oh yeah, because there's so much, Tiny. There's so much information in this book. Again, if Gary Wayne is out there and he wants to be a guest, please call us 828-407-0046, because that would be an awesome show.
And if there's any theologians out there that would like to speak, let us know.
Tiny, that's a great idea. You know what? That'd be awesome. I would love to have a theologian. That would be an incredible show, because we could discuss this topic biblically and get to the root of what do these words actually mean? What does this bloodline actually mean? Is it Nephilim? Is it made up? Is it just in conjunction with? Is it an evolutionary species? Is it Gigantopithecus left over? There's all these questions we have, right? And that's what we do.
I never understood, and I have a complicated faith base, we'll say, but I never understood why there's such a disconnect between creationists and evolutionists. Why couldn't it be both?
See, that's I agree with you, because I'm a firm believer. The Big Bang's nice, but who created the Big Bang?
Right.
Someone had to do it. Someone had to kickstart it. So why can't you have both? And maybe time was measured different. Who's to say that and God created the earth on the day four, and then whatever rested. I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not biblical enough to know the exact, but it said God created the world and everything in 6 days and rested on the seventh.
Yeah.
Right. Well, how long was a day? Was it a million years? Was it a billion years? We're talking about it. Yeah.
For an entity that is timeless, time means nothing.
Exactly. Not only that, the arrogance of people to say we're the only living, organisms in the universe. You're talking about God. You don't think God can like invent and create multiple planets, realities, dimensions when he wants to at will?
Yeah.
Come on. That's just arrogant, you know?
But
So
we don't know. We could be bacteria on a mole on a giant, and we'd never know it.
you're absolutely right. And you know what, Tiny? That's a good transition because that's all the time we have. We want to thank everyone for listening to Beyond Fringe. If you have a story or want to be a guest on the show, please contact us at beyondfringe001@gmail.com or 828-407-0046. And the best way to find all this information is to go to ashevillcryptidandparanormal.com. Tiny, you have anything else to say?
Oh, I think I've said enough for the night.
Are you sure?
Yes, other than thank you for listening.
I am the Cryptid Guy. Tiny and I thank you for listening in. Remember, my friends, knowledge is power. And the only way to defeat the intentional veil of darkness that surrounds us all, battle the ignorance that shackles us to hatred and despair, and restore the balance, is to let in the light. So remember, my friends, always let there be light in your life and keep believing. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.